If you have a garden and a library, you have everything you need. 6 mistakes mankind keeps making century after century. Believing that personal gain is made by crushing others. Worrying about things that cannot be changed or corrected. Insisting that a thing is impossible because we cannot accomplish it. Refusing to set aside trivial preferences. Neglecting development and refinement of the mind. Times are bad. Children no longer obey their parents, and everyone is writing a book. To be ignorant of what occurred before you were born is to remain always a child. For what is the worth of human life, unless it is woven into the life of our ancestors by the records of history? Read at every weight, read at all hours, read within leisure, read in times of labor, read as one goes in, read as one goeth out. The task of the educated mind is simply put, read to lead. Friendship improves happiness, and abates misery, by doubling our joys, and dividing our grief. For there is but one essential justice which cements society, and one law which establishes this justice. This law is right reason, which is the true rule of all commandments and prohibitions. Whoever neglects this law, whether written or unwritten, is necessarily unjust and wicked. Not to know what has been transacted in former times is to be always a child. If no use is made of the labors of past ages, the world must remain always in the infancy of knowledge. The life given us, by nature is short, but the memory of a well-spent life is eternal. For books are more than books, they are the life, the very heart and core of ages past, the reason why men worked and died, the essence and quintessence of their lives. The life of the dead is placed on the memories of the living. The love you gave in life keeps people alive beyond their time. Anyone who was given love will always live on in another's heart. It is not by muscle, speed, or physical dexterity that great things are achieved, but by reflection, force of character, and judgment. What is morally wrong can never be advantageous, even when it enables you to make some gain that you believe to be to your advantage. The mere act of believing that some wrongful course of action constitutes an advantage is pernicious. It is foolish to tear one's hair in grief, as though sorrow would be made less by baldness. When you wish to instruct, be brief, that men's, children's, minds take in quickly what you say, learn its lesson, and retain it faithfully. Every word that is unnecessary only pours over the side of a brimming mind. Our span of life is brief, but is long enough for us to live well and honestly. The enemy is within the gates, it is with our own luxury, our own folly, our own criminality that we have to contend. The man who backbites an absent friend, nay, who does not stand up for him when another blames him, the man who angles for bursts of laughter and for the repute of a wit, who can invent what he never saw, who cannot keep a secret, that man is black at heart, mark and avoid him. Knowledge which is divorced from justice may be called cunning rather than wisdom. Though silence is not necessarily an admission, it is not a denial either. God's law is right reason. When perfectly understood, it is called wisdom. When applied by government in regulating human relations, it is called justice. To be content with what we possess is the greatest and most secure of riches. It is the peculiar quality of a fool to perceive the faults of others and to forget his own. A mind without instruction can no more bear fruit than can a field, however fertile, without cultivation. Diseases of the soul are more dangerous and more numerous than those of the body. Hours and days and months and years go by, the past returns no more, and what is to be we cannot know, but whatever the time gives us in which we live, we should therefore be content. Nothing stands out so conspicuously, or remains so firmly fixed in the memory, as something which you have blundered. Men decide far more problems by hate, love, lust, rage, sorrow, joy, hope, fear, illusion or some other inward emotion, than by reality, authority, any legal standard, judicial precedent, or statute. Ut conclave sine libris ita corpus sine anima, room without books is like a body without a soul. History is the witness that testifies to the passing of time, it illumines reality, vitalizes memory, provides guidance in daily life and brings us tidings of antiquities. True law is right reason in agreement with nature, it is of universal application, unchanging and everlasting, it summons to duty by its commands, and averts from wrongdoing by its prohibitions. They who say that we should love our fellow citizens but not foreigners, destroy the universal brotherhood of mankind, with which benevolence and justice would perish forever. A mental stain can neither be blotted out by the passage of time nor washed away by any waters. In a republic this rule ought to be observed, that the majority should not have the predominant power. Everyone has the obligation to ponder well his own specific traits of character. He must also regulate them adequately and not wonder whether someone else's traits might suit him better. The more definitely his own a man's character is, the better it fits him. I have always been of the opinion that unpopularity earned by doing what is right is not unpopularity at all, but glory. Here is a man whose life and actions the world has already condemned, yet whose enormous fortune has already brought him acquittal. The mind becomes accustomed to things by the habitual sight of them, and neither wonders nor inquires about the reasons for things it sees all the time. If you have no confidence in self, you are twice defeated in the race of life. With confidence, you have won even before you have started. If you would abolish covetousness, you must abolish its mother, profusion. Neither can embellishments of language be found without arrangement and expression of thoughts, nor can thoughts be made to shine without the light of language. There is, I assure you, a medical art for the soul. It is philosophy, whose aid need not be sought, as in bodily diseases, from outside ourselves. We must endeavor with all our resources and all our strength to become capable of doctoring ourselves. So it may well be believed that when I found him taking a complete holiday, with a vast supply of books at command, he had the air of indulging in a literary debauch, if the term may be applied to so honorable an occupation. What can be more delightful than to have someone to whom you can say everything with the same absolute confidence as to yourself? Is not prosperity robbed of half its value if you have no one to share your joy? When I notice how carefully arranged his hair is, and when I watch him adjusting the parting with one finger, I cannot imagine that this man could conceive of such a wicked thing as to destroy the Roman constitution. No power on earth, if it labors beneath the burden of fear, can possibly be strong enough to survive. O philosophy, life's guide! O searcher out of virtue and expeller of vices! What could we in every age of men have been without thee? Thou hast produced cities, thou hast called men scattered about into the social enjoyment of life. For he, Cato, gives his opinion as if he were in Plato's Republic, not in Romulus' cesspool. Just as apples when unripe are torn from trees, but when ripe and mellow drop down, so it is violence that takes life from young men, ripeness from old. This ripeness is so delightful to me that, as I approach nearer to death, I seem, as it were, to be sighting land, and to be coming to port at last after a long voyage. What can be more delightful than to have someone to whom you can say everything with the same absolute confidence as to yourself? Those wars are unjust which are undertaken without provocation. For only a war waged for revenge or defense can be just. I conclude, then, that the plea of having acted in the interests of a friend is not a valid excuse for a wrong action. We may then lay down this rule of friendship: neither ask nor consent to do what is wrong. For the plea, for friendship's sake, is a discreditable one, and not to be admitted for a moment. Freedom will bite back more fiercely when suspended than when she remains undisturbed. Those who lack within themselves the means for living a blessed and happy life will find any age painful. How to grow old, ancient wisdom for the second half of life. The essence of Ciceronian philosophy is a sense of wonder at the interconnectedness of human beings to one another and to the universe that encompasses them. When you are aspiring to the highest place, it is honorable to reach the second or even the third rank. I cannot find a faithful message-bearer, he wrote to his friend, the scholar Atticus. How few are they who are able to carry a rather weighty letter without lightening it by reading. My dear Scipio and Laelius. Men, of course, who have no resources in themselves for securing a good and happy life find every age burdensome. But those who look for all happiness from within can never think anything bad which nature makes inevitable. Speaking Latin properly is indeed to be held in the highest regard, not just because of its own merits, but in fact because it has been neglected by the masses. For it is not so much noble to know Latin as it is disgraceful not to know it. We must stand up against old age and make up for its drawbacks by taking pains. We must fight it as we should an illness. We must look after our health, use moderate exercise, take just enough food and drink to recruit, but not to overload, our strength. Nor is it the body alone that must be supported, but the intellect and soul much more. In communities and individuals alike, excessive freedom topples over into excessive slavery. Extreme freedom produces a tyrant, along with the extremely harsh and evil slavery that goes with him. But I must at the very beginning lay down this principle: friendship can only exist between good men. Instead, let virtue herself, by her own unaided allurements, summon you to a glory that is genuine and real. Some people will say that memory fades away as the years pass. Of course it does if you don't exercise it or aren't very bright to begin with. How to grow old, ancient wisdom for the second half of life. For as I like a man in whom there is something of the old, so I like a man in whom there is something of the young, and he who follows this maxim, in body will possibly be an old man, but he will never be an old man in mind. There is also a tradition about Socrates. He liked walking, it is recorded, until a late hour of the evening, and when someone asked him why he did this he said he was trying to work up an appetite for his dinner. There is no doubt that a person who is called generous and open-handed has duty in mind, not gain. So likewise justice looks for no prize and no price, it is sought for itself, and is at once the cause and meaning of all the virtues.